Yeah. I think we're live, Hindol. Hi.
Hello. Hi.
What's
Namaste.
up? How are you?
Yeah. Wait, I can hear myself.
I had to mute myself. But have you
Yes.
read the hi everyone who said
Huh.
in the chat? There are quite a few people in the chat. Yeah, we're late. We're
Hello,
off.
hello. Really sorry for
Hi
being late.
guys.
Yeah.
I'll give context to everyone. We're
Huh.
late because of me. I am going to move houses tomorrow evening or the day after tomorrow in the morning. So I was busy packing and I did not realize it's 8 already. And Hindol was on time. He said I'm going to be there in 1 and he was there. But I'm sorry, we're late because of me. And anyway, Hindol, कैसे हैं आप? आपने पूरी किताब पढ़ी, I think.
Yeah,
You've
this is
completed a
I'm
month.
making like I'm appearing on a book a month after a very long time.
Yeah, when
And
was the last time you actually came for the book a month?
I think the last book I read was Evelyn Hugo. That was the book I finished completely,
Yeah.
and we had done that quiz. So, वो था. But yeah, after it feels nice that finally, I have completed a
And
book.
we're going to be joined by a very special guest, of course,
Yes.
Ratna Pathak Ma'am. Uh,
Yeah.
and I'm a little scared because मैंने homework complete नहीं किया है.
Yeah.
Uh, and
I
I
think the main motivation for me to finish the book was Ratna Ma'am's message when we had discussed my first reading of the book and you
yeah.
had sent it to her. I mean, उसके बाद थोड़ा मुझे जोश आ गया कि नहीं, I should finish this book.
Yeah, I'm the bad student this time.
Yeah.
Pokhraj is in the comments. Hi, Pokhraj.
Hello, hello.
Kushal is also here. Kushal, thank you for. He was my secret Santa. He gifted me this whole set of Mahabharata,
Yeah.
and I was on part one when I started reading Yugant. By the way, guys, this was the book for the month, and I started reading Mahabharata along with this, and it's amazing.
Right.
For everyone who's, can you hear me properly? Because I just realized the mic was very far.
No, no,
But
I think everyone can hear you.
cool.
Yeah.
So I think it was an amazing experience reading Mahabharata along with Yugant because I had zero information when I went into the book. Like
Mhm.
everything I had heard of Mahabharata was from my childhood.
Right.
जो इतना अच्छा नहीं था because my memory is very poor. But it's nice. What was your experience? Because I know you had quite a, if we can, for lack of a better word, you had some existential crisis.
Yeah, yeah.
And you
So,
started reading the book.
yeah. So the first chapter itself, like the first chapter is obviously the introduction, and uske baad the first essay of sorts is
Hmm.
on the character of Bhishma. It's called the final effort.
Yeah.
And like जो भी मेरा knowledge था of Mahabharata is like obviously from whatever I have heard in childhood वगैरह. So the Bhishma character was like the main reason, like the main motivation to, like he was the moral center of sorts. And the first essay itself completely debunks that, and it completely rips apart all his character and his hypocrisy. तो मेरे को थोड़ा ऐसे ही हो गया कि should I read this book further? Like, is this a good place to be
But
in?
you finished the entire book. And what
Yeah.
is your opinion now? Like when you went into it
Mhm.
versus how you've come out? Are you a changed person?
See, I think I'm not like I'm not a changed person yet, but some of
You
the perspectives are interesting. Like I'm not going to take everything at face value because there are some things I disagree with, something that I agree with. But it was a very interesting take. Like I would want to read, more informed opinions on the epics because what happens is that since these are oral tradition stories, we don't actually consider them very seriously. Like we
Right.
don't give them the academic importance that they should get.
Hmm.
Academic importance in the sense that अब science textbook पढ़ते हो तो you actually question the laws वगैरह depending on which coaching class you went to.
Hmm.
हमारे में नहीं करते थे but हम लोग कोशिश करते थे. So it's fun to actually engage with the text and make your own interpretation. So like what I am now very motivated to do is revisit like a proper version of the Mahabharata if I can, and read between the lines and see if I can come up with something that people wouldn't have thought of. So,
Right.
and also on the side, I discovered something very interesting. So these videos are primarily in Bengali, but I would urge everyone to check them out. I don't know how you'll understand them, but I would still urge you. So the filmmaker Rituparna Ghosh has a collection of interviews where
Mhm.
he's talked about the Mahabharata. So he had two important influences in his life. One was Rabindranath Tagore's poetry and like everything that he's written, and the second was Mahabharata. So he says that whenever I felt confused about relationships, whenever I couldn't understand, how to write this character, what would that character say, I go back to the Mahabharata, because every permutation combination of relationships is in there. So that is something that I discovered. So yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
yeah.
Ratna Ma'am is also here, guys.
Mm.
I'm a little scared. I remember the first time we had invited her. I froze then, but like I won't freeze now. But I'm
Yeah.
just letting her in.
Yeah.
Hindol.
Mm.
Yeah. Hi, ma'am. Good
Hello.
evening.
Good evening.
Hello,
Good
ma'am.
evening. Hi.
This is Hindol. He's my colleague and also my friend.
Hello,
And
Hindol.
Hi.
we were just discussing the book, and Hindol was telling us how he's evolved and how there are certain things he agrees with in the book, and there are certain things that he disagrees with. But Hindol, please continue your point so that we can take this.
First of all, ma'am, welcome to our channel. And I just wanted to know, firstly, that what was your experience of reading the book again? Like, is there anything new that you discovered from your previous reads?
Actually, I did not manage to read very much of it because
Mhm.
I got suddenly very tied up with all kinds of things. So
Right.
I ended up not reading a lot of it, but
Mhm.
I was sort of skimming through it in bits and
Mhm.
pieces. And
Mhm.
certainly I'd forgotten a lot of the details of the points that she was making.
Mhm.
But by and large, I think I still found the book an extremely eye-opening experience,
Right.
like it was the first time I read it.
Mhm.
It suddenly made me look at so much that I have received
Right.
as part of my childhood and as part of the general culture all around us,
Mhm.
and made me realize again the value of, you know, going deeper into a book like the Mahabharata.
Right.
As they say, that it's something that you can live an entire life dipping
Mhm.
into again and again.
Mhm.
And people who do so find it extraordinarily rewarding. I mean, not the Gita, which a lot of people read, of course, but just the Mahabharata and
Mhm.
all the human issues that it raises and the kind of conflicts that come up between right and wrong.
Mhm.
Uh, those are conflicts that I find completely easy to identify with.
Right. Do you
What
have a favorite character by any chance?
Oh, of course. Karna, of course.
Mhm.
When I was younger, of course, I was completely in love with Karna.
Right.
And but he also, even then, struck me as a person who seemed to accept status quo.
Mhm.
I mean, he fought against it, but deep down inside, the resentment of um, his rejection and his uh, uh, somehow the caste that he was assigned
Right.
and the caste that he is born into, that conflict
Mhm.
uh, uh, has become stronger for me now.
Right.
Also because I've read a few more things in the meanwhile.
Mhm.
Uh, and they definitely make me look at Karna in quite different ways.
Right.
But Draupadi, I've
Mhm.
always found her extraordinarily fascinating.
Right.
And another character who doesn't really get a lot of mileage is Vidur,
Mhm.
the one who really was qualified,
Right.
the one who could have become king and probably should have.
Mhm.
He was able to. I mean, he was the most qualified among the three brothers,
Right.
and the complete unfairness of what happened to him.
Mhm.
Bhishma, another very conflicted character. I mean, he stands for all kinds of things, particularly today. Suddenly, Bhishma is the way we want to go,
Right.
holding on to our culture, so called, without questioning,
Mhm.
received wisdom, completely accepting received wisdom, which seems to be what we are moving towards again. All these were new conflicts that came up. But as I said, I really didn't get a chance to go into it very as deeply as I would have liked to.
I
What was
think
your experience? I'd like to know what you guys thought.
I had shared Hindol and I were discussing. So Hindol and I were reading it together, and I did not finish my homework, and I'm really sorry for that. But I think I'd shared with you what Hindol thought of Bhishma, and we started our discussion because of Bhishma. Because I think Hindol loved Bhishma, and when he read the chapter, why don't you take it, Hindol?
Yeah, so when I had listened to this Mahabharata story from my grandparents when I was a child, then they made Bhishma a very important character in their narration, that, this is someone you should look up to. And I think they just wanted that I should respect them. So that was some subliminal messaging from their end. But it became a very important character in my head, that it was because of this person that he kind of stood for 3 generations, and even he played an important role in the battle. So seeing him get ripped apart in the first essay itself was somewhat of an experience.
Yes,
But
I agree. Because the same thing happened to me when I read it the first time. It's like my grandfather being criticized so strongly, How dare you? But yes, absolutely.
Some of the experiences, especially about the female characters. One of my favorite essays from this book is about Gandhari. The whole episode with Gandhari and Dhritarashtra in the final days of their life. And that was such a moving, it could be a scene from any movie or a play, and it would be, a dream for any director to make. It was such a very moving piece. And there's the other comparison between Draupadi and Sita. That Sita being the ideal woman image, while Draupadi was a more human character in that sense. So did you find these comparisons in your analysis?
Yeah. Yes. I think one ends up comparing the Ramayana and the Mahabharata.
Right.
Sort of instinctively, because there are so many parallels and there's so much. And the Ramayana certainly comes across as a much more strongly patriarchal kind of look at the world, a desire to establish and reinforce status quo. Whereas the Mahabharata, with all its complexity, always struck me as a book which ran closer to what I was seeing around me in the world. And therefore, was much more interesting for me to read and to go back to. So, and as it happened, it's obviously a favorite with theatre walas. So there was Andha Yug that I did. I didn't act in it. I did the costumes for it. For Saturday Today's revival of it. But it's a fascinating play. And it really made me think a lot about all the characters. And then I read an interview that Dharmveer Bharti had given about the writing of Andha Yug and how conflicted he was about a couple of things, about Gandhari and about Krishna. For him, Krishna was really the villain of the piece for a long time, even while he was writing it, he says. And then he found that he couldn't come to terms with that as he read more and he wrote more. And he had a very long, difficult conflict with himself. And he talked about it with several others. To arrive at what he did for Krishna, with Krishna. And there is an absolutely beautiful speech in Dharmveer Bharti's Andha Yug, where he accepts Gandhari's curse. So that was a completely eye-opening experience for me also. So, and the Mahabharata, of course, has been used traditionally in dance, in theatre across the country. So you see so many versions of it, from Janbai doing Panchali to the South Indian, the Kuriyatam versions of Mahabharata. I mean, absolutely. They just turn everything upside down, what you have received. I really, the Ramanand Sagar version finally helped. I've dropped it from the Amar Chitra Katha version. I've completely washed it out of my system because of this extended reading around Mahabharata.
Mhm. You mentioned about the different adaptations of Mahabharata in different forms, be it in theater or movies. So, is there any one particular adaptation that you would have loved to be a part of?
Of course, Andayug, I would have loved to
Yeah,
play Gandhari,
right.
but now I've got the white hair also for Gandhari, so I'm hoping somebody will revive
Right.
Andayug. But any of the characters, any of the women, uh,
Mhm.
a young man wrote a play on Karna, calling it
Mhm.
Radhe,
Radhe.
not Kunte,
Mhm.
Radhe,
Right.
because that's the name of his adopted
For
mother,
the
his
foster
foster
mother.
mother.
Yeah.
And he identifies himself as Radhe,
Mhm.
son of Radhe. So, and it's a completely different look,
Mhm.
much more critical look
Mhm.
at the society which produces a Karna.
Right.
And in that, the character of Radhe, of course, Radha, of course, but the character of Karna's wife
Mhm.
is a very interesting character also.
Mhm.
The one who knows that her husband has loved another
Mhm.
always and has yet lived with him and been there and she finally commits sati with him
Right.
for a man she never knew,
Mhm.
a man who never loved her.
Mhm.
So I think these kinds of things
Mhm.
have added to one's understanding of this piece. Kinamati Karve was certainly the first person who gave me the
Mhm.
motivation to go deeper into it.
Right.
But what did
So,
you think of Gandhari? What was your, you said that you found her very interesting.
I found it very interesting because in college we had done a, with all our limited understanding, we had done an adaptation of Andha Yug for
Yeah,
our college theater festival. So I played Dhritarashtra and there
yeah,
was another girl who played Gandhari. So
yeah.
I read the entire play for that. And even then, like it was one of the first pieces where I saw Krishna being, depicted with gray shades, the character of Krishna being depicted in that manner. And then Gandhari's because that was the only time when somebody presented Gandhari's perspective to me. Otherwise,
Mhm.
what happens with these characters is that we remember the heroes, we don't remember the people who had their own, journeys on the sides.
Yeah,
So it was a very interesting perspective, and especially reading the essay where she depicts the last, few days of Gandhari and Dhritarashtra's life, where
yeah,
she finally, learns to see again,
yes,
and it's her own death. So that was a very moving experience for me.
yeah,
And I hope someday someone adapts just that bit into like a movie or a play, so I could visually see what was happening.
yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. I personally, so when I started reading Yugant, I was also reading Mahabharat alongside. And initially, what you've been told by your grandparents is something that's very black and white. And when I actually started reading it, I realized it was sort of a validation also, because to see certain characters, especially Karna, because I did not go from one page to another, I picked up characters in
Yes,
between,
ah,
which I actually knew well.
yes,
And especially with Karna, it was sort of validating to see that resentment, because sometimes you feel bad, and then there have been times where you have been corrected. Um, to correct that behavior, where you've been told to correct that behavior. Although I wouldn't recommend it to anybody to follow that resentment. But it was in some way, the gray characters were sort of validating that, hey, it's human to be a certain way, but there are always reasons why you should correct them. And Mahabharata gives you the very
Mhm.
reason that why this should be checked. And I think that is something that really stayed with me.
Mhm.
hmm,
Like even as a child, I used to find Duryodhan very fascinating, only for the reason that he stood up for Karn when no one else did.
correct.
That it was kind of a redeeming quality that he had, that when all the princes are presenting their martial arts expertise and Karn wants a chance, but no one else wants to give him. And then Duryodhan stands up for him. So I found that very endearing, for the lack of a better word. So I would have wished like if she had delved into, such characters as well,
Yes,
because it's very fascinating. Like the stronger your villain, I guess the stronger your heroes are. So I would have loved to read something on those lines as well.
right. Interestingly, there is another play, an old Sanskrit play
Mhm.
written by Bhas called I'm forgetting the name, but it is about the death of Duryodhana.
Mhm.
And uh, I've seen productions of that
Mhm.
also. I've read it, of course. Urubangam is the name of the play.
Mhm.
Urubangam is the breaking of the fire, which is what they do to kill him finally
Right.
while he's hiding under the water.
Yes.
Exactly. And in that play, he's not called Duryodhana. He's called Suryodhana.
So yeah. Yeah.
It, the first time I read it, it sort of hit me aback. It was completely by surprise. How Suryodhana? Who is this new character? And then you realize that his mother wouldn't have called him Duryodhana.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For her, she was a child.
Yeah.
And there was a time when he must have been not any other child. He just went the wrong way. And that again is what you see around you all the time. That there are some people who seem to be unable to control their baser instincts. And Duryodhana is a question of that. That often start off as Duryodhana.
Right.
But suddenly do become Duryodhana.
I'm also going to add two more members, ma'am. They've just joined.
Mhm.
And they are also our patrons. They're godfathers. And I think they also had a couple of questions that they wanted to ask you. So we have Anuj, Hitesh, and Priya, and all of them have completely read the book and devoured it.
Hello, ma'am.
Hello, hello.
Hello,
Like,
ma'am.
very intimidating to share a frame with you.
Nice to meet you.
No, ma'am, it was a fascinating book. So I was born in a Brahmin family, and I have read, like, we have Mahabharata, Ramayana, all the Gorakhpur prints, not different Tika Tippanis which are there. But interestingly, we had the one from Mahatma Gandhi on Gita,
Mhm.
and then there was a Lahori Gita we had in the homes because we came from
Came from
Pakistan.
Lahore.
Mhm.
No, not Lahore, from Multan,
No,
but yeah,
from
same
Pakistan.
area.
Yeah.
So I always had this fascination that, like, we are taught that these epics are, like, they are very stable. It's like there was a time when this all happened, and then I read a different book and something different happened. Like a Parshuram in Ramayana is different and is different. And
Mhm.
when I read Yugant, one thing which was really interesting was that for Ramayana, when she is writing about Ramayana, she's writing about, like, she's like writing like it's a story. It is a love story of a prince and the princess of Janak,
Mhm.
and they are their story, and he went on to. It's a very Bollywoodish drama, and when she's about Mahabharata, she's bringing in the realism, that grayness in the characters. Even the Krishna, who is God in the current generation, is shown in a very suspicious lights. But in the end, the last page of Krishna, when she says that best part of Krishna was that he accepted what was deemed upon it. Like, he did something, he was the reason of kind of reason for everything in Mahabharata. So he accepted that all my kins will die the way the Yadavas died. So what was the reason that she believed that one is a story and other is, like, she tried to justify, or you can say, bring a kind of realism in the events of Mahabharata. But in Ramayana, she was very like she was not justifying things. She was just like when she was writing about Draupadi, she was like how Sita was presented, and it looks like a love story. But when Draupadi comes, she has to adjust with everything. Although she was a Panchali and all the titles were bestowed upon her. Um,
I think I wouldn't like to speak for Iravati Karve and tell you, say anything about why she uh, makes this kind of distinction. But to me also, the Ramayana does come across as a much more unidimensional story. The word you used was Bollywood, and that is what Bollywood is famous for. That they simplify all the gray areas and go for the, the more uh, conventional, the more stereotypical ideas. Most important, I think the Ramayana, which is a later uh, book than the Mahabharata. Correct me if I'm wrong. think so. I think Ravati can be that way. That Ramayana was written
Sorry, ma'am, I
before.
didn't. Ma'am, it's a ever long confusion which came first. Although it is thought that Dwapar came before Treta. Like sorry, Dwapar came after Treta,
After
so
Treta.
it
So
is
Ramayana
thought.
probably is before.
She
Yeah.
also does mention that in the Mahabharata, Draupadi is told the story of Sita, that
Yeah.
these are women who have also undergone suffering.
Correct. So Ramayana is before the Mahabharata. So it seems to be a much, and I read somewhere, I don't know if it is the introduction to this, which is written by somebody else, not by her, I mean, the forward to the book, where I think there is a mention, sorry, in the introduction maybe. I've lost my thread of thought. We were comparing Mahabharata and the Ramayana, right?
Right,
Yes.
right.
And no, I'm sorry, I've forgotten the point I was trying to
Ma'am, we
make.
were
No
saying, we
problem.
were discussing how one seems to be a real, like she thought one as a real story and other as a story.
So probably since the Mahabharata was written after the Ramayana, society had already started changing and had started experiencing upheavals of various types of people living together. So the
Yes.
accommodative elements of the other story seems to have become more easily doable by the time the Mahabharata came along. I suppose the world just got more complex. I mean, today, if you see a film made in the 1940s, you think how charming, how simplistic it is. Today's life is so much more complex. We could never write a film like that. We could never tell a story like that. Because our lives are so much more complex. Maybe that's what had happened by the time Mahabharata got written. Or at least the story started coming together. Of course, we don't exactly have a date for when it was written, and it has been added to over the centuries. So this, and because of the fact that it was constantly added to, I think it's drawing upon what's happening around all the time. So it is a much more complex story and cannot be told as simply and sweetly as the Ramayana. It had a nice beginning, middle, and end, a simple conflict, good versus evil, and it was resolved. But even then, it was not resolved. Not for Sita. Even after her, she was banished. So
Yeah.
there is no simple end even in the Ramayana. It's not very happily ever after.
Ma'am,
The problems are many.
if I may add, what I've got from these two epics is that I have read Vedas as well, not very thoroughly, from like very basic Vedas. So what I have seen in Vedas, they talk about all these gods, Agni, Vayu, and different gods, like devtas, if we call it devtas, and they sit together, and you offer them your sacrifice, and they give you back something. So, and in these epics, when we see the characters are basically, he is the son of Indra, he's son of Agni, he's son of Vayu. So I think the basic concept I get is basically they are trying to show us like the Vedas with the stories, like explaining the philosophy with the help of a story. But when I read Yugan, it just like it's basically the story is a philosophy in itself.
Yeah.
So the idea of, like, as Devdat Patnaik says, the idea of this is like darshan is very shown in these texts, if you may add.
I didn't quite get that. How do you mean darshan is shown in the text?
Like, ma'am, darshan means philosophy. If we translate, so Devdat Patnaik says when we say darshan, you should read the philosophy, not we focus on seeing a deity. So I think that like, how can we like if it is an interpolation of a philosophy, then interpolation of philosophy is a philosophy in itself. So that always confuses me. And when I read books like these, it just like adding confusion to itself. So if like you have gained something, if you can show to us.
Ouch. It's like you put me on the spot here. But what definitely what I have understood out of life really is that the complexities are hard to capture in storytelling. And I see that in the work I do all the time.
Right.
There are very few writers, directors who are interested in trying to capture the nuances. And there are not enough people in the audience that are so keen on nuance. That number seems to be rising. But
Yes.
by and large, we seem to be quite happy with broad strokes in our storytelling. I think nuance needs time. For example, in Kuriyatam, each episode of the Mahabharata would be dealt with. Each episode, matlab, I don't even mean a whole parva. I just mean one little moment. The first time that Ghatotkach met Bhim. Now, that moment could be extended for hours by the performers. And they would keep adding stories as they went along from different sources, some folk, some classical, some Sanskrit, some local. And they just keep enriching the material. They're constantly delving into the material. It's a lot like our system of raga. You know, we don't have a composition, a fixed, decided composition that would be played again and again and again and again in the same composition will be played, different ways maybe, but the same thing will happen. Here we have no such form. We call it a bandish, but the bandish is very loose. It outline सी है, उसमें आप रंग भरते रहिए. Similarly, I find in our storytelling, particularly the epics, outline सी है, उसमें आप अपनी जिंदगी के रंग भरते रहिए. और हमारी जिंदगी में वो रंग मिलते हैं, which we can connect to these stories. And they give us the sense that others, for centuries before us, have been thinking about these things. And these are things that have mattered to humans for a very long time. And we have changed, but not all that much. We still have the same emotional needs. We still have the same philosophical questions. And it's easy to dump all those questions and say, I will follow Guru ji. बस आपको मैं करूंगी, आप जो बोलेंगे मैं कान पकड़ के आपके पीछे लग जाऊंगी. That's so much easier.
Yes.
But like you, if you want to accept that confusion, that's a lifelong problem that you have inherited, taken on yourself. Problem is, it's a lifelong task you have given yourself. It's something that you will have to delve in consistently. And as you grow, you will learn so much from your own experiences that will add to it. All I know is that as a book, as a story which talks about human experience in the most extreme forms possible also. Imagine meeting your son who is half blind. You know, I mean, how do you write that scene? If today I have to write that scene, what will I write in that? How will I write that moment when Gandhari discovers that her future husband is blind and she decides to tie a blindfold to herself? What she went through at that time. How do you write that? So you can just, you can keep using this to feed your own soul and your own imagination all your life. In my job, it's absolute gold mine.
Thank you, ma'am. It's really helpful to, we have all those books at home and it's really helpful when I go through them. Thank you.
And you are one of the few people I know who has actually read the Mahabharata and the Ramayana as part of the growing up process. We come across little bits and pieces of it. But if you've had the opportunity to actually go through the whole,
our family, they say, don't worship these books. Reading is the only worship you can do to them.
So would you read the Tulsi Ramayana?
Yes, I have read it many times, I can say. Tulsi Ramayana is very one. It's the poetic, it's beautiful.
It's a beautiful one. And it's really lovely to sing and to act. And,
Yes.
I mean, it's part of the Ram Leela system. So while I was at
Tulsi
the
Ramayana is a different topic. You can talk on like every part is just beautiful.
But thank you, Hitesh. I think Anuj, you also had a very interesting question.
Yes.
Please.
Yes, first of all, I would like to thank the Chalchitra team for giving me this opportunity to share a frame with you, ma'am. And I would also want to mention that I had the fortune of attending your play, Dear Liar, in Bangalore later last year, and I had a great time.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
It was great. And yeah, coming to the question, I think I've been an atheist / agnostic all my life, and reading Yuganta, it was like very fascinating to me as a reader because how pragmatically she has addressed that story, that okay, perceive it as a family feud, not like a story of gods and goddesses. So that really struck with me. And like a curious reader, I was constantly shuffling between the book and specific scenes from B.R. Chopra or the latest Mahabharata to actually visualize what I'm reading in the book. So the whole process was fun for me. Uh, this very specific question which I had was from Draupadi's essay, where the author very specifically mentions that uh, uh, the whole Indian society from Mahabharat's time has been very patriarchal in terms of how it's wired. Still, I felt conflicted when she mentioned that the most terrible deed of Draupadi was the fact that she was vocally questioning Yudhishthir during the Draupadi Swayamvar incident, and she should probably not have done that because uh, being vocal in a group full of men at that time was somewhat not allowed to for a woman to do. So if she was very vocal about the fact that the society was patriarchal, why did not she praise Draupadi for this special deed and choose to criticize her instead?
Anuj, I really need to read that chapter again. I didn't reread it this side. So I'm not 100% certain of the kind of point she was trying to make. That, I don't know, was she trying to say that Draupadi sort of asked for it, that she asked for trouble by questioning the men in the company in public? Is that what she was trying to imply?
Yeah, that and the fact that at that time
it was not accepted.
It was not accepted. Yeah.
Yes, and that's a fact. By then, I think the patriarchal system had become deeply established.
Right.
In most of the country and all over the world, patriarchy is what you see everywhere.
Yeah.
Very few societies will still retain the earlier matriarchal system.
Yeah.
So
Right.
anyway, but Draupadi definitely is a character with a great deal of resentment and anger.
Yes.
And that is when the anger starts off towards your father even, isn't it? Because Drupad created her and her brother as ways of taking revenge on this family.
Yeah.
So, and that I'm a little conflicted about what that really means. The fact that always there's a reason in your past or in some story connected to you, which makes you suffer in the present, and which makes it's sort of reinforcing the karma theory, the rebirth theory, that your पिछले जन्म के पाप और कुछ पुण्य will reflect in your present karma.
Right.
So maybe it's an establishment of that, because even Karna has a story like that about why he suffered so much, because in some previous life the poor guy had done some rubbish. I've forgotten the details, but that kind of thing, that everything goes back. So I don't really know why. Is that an explanatory thing? Is that a way of giving an excuse for people's actions. I don't know. What did you think? Do you feel that way?
So I was very conflicted, and I also chose to Google this question because I wanted to know what the other readers feel about this. So a very interesting perspective I read was that some people perceive it as a sarcastic piece in the book, that how could she question a group of men? So coming like writing it in a very sarcastic tone and not actually meaning it. So maybe that was the point, like between the lines, which we could perceive it as. Yeah. But yeah, like the overall, the book was very interesting. And in fact, I would definitely want to also ask you that, do you have any other such pragmatic takes on society and culture in general? Any other recommendations which you might have on similar lines, maybe?
I can't think of anything that I can recommend offhand, but I'll think about it, and if I can come across something. But yes, I mean, there are certain books that have affected me in the way I look at the world and the way I look at art and culture and many things. One of those books definitely was John Berger's Ways of Seeing. I found that an absolutely eye-opening book when I read it. Again, he was talking about Europe largely, and the Renaissance, and the way in which you look at the world changed in that period. A very, very fascinating book. But again, it's not connected to this, but it is certainly something that makes you look at things in a different perspective. I like that. I like seeing things from all kinds of angles. I recently came across a lovely book called The Ganja Mahua Chronicles by, I'm forgetting the name. He's a Madhya Pradesh painter, a tribal painter who has written this book. And he is also, I think, the nephew of Rangan Singh, the first person who brought that kind of Gond tribal art out of their villages and into Bhopal at the Bharat Bhavan. And this book is fascinating because one part of it, of course, the whole of it is fascinating because he's talking about the journey of a tribal person, a painter who has inherited a certain art form, which is not known to him as art. It's part of his ritualistic life. But now he's presenting it as art to an urban audience, a different audience. So the story is really about that journey of his. But in that, he has a beautiful chapter on Eklavya, which is another story that fascinates me thoroughly. The Eklavya story reflects itself also in the Karna story. His story with wanting to get into the Drona ashram, his story of wanting to join Parshuram, to learn, that struggle to learn, to educate himself, and the ways in which that was being thwarted. I mean, that's something that today people can identify with immediately, isn't it? This whole reservation debate that we've been having. And, I mean, I really find that it's a continuation of the same thing. The fact that education and the chance to improve oneself and improve one's life is denied to for so many reasons. Where you are born, in what kind of family you are born, what kind of money do you have, everything gets in the way of your acquiring skills. And it's a story that connects so wonderfully with our lives. And this gentleman's story, take on Eklavya is absolutely fascinating. I don't want to tell you about it. You guys read it. Because he really he's questioning this Arjun ki ek aankh, ek tak aankh, ek lakshya. That kind of a very, very masculine concept of complete sharp focus to the exclusion of everything else. He's questioning that. So
Wow.
it's a very interesting take.
Great. I've taken notes, ma'am, and thank you so much for this recommendation, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Anuj. I wanted to ask everyone actually on the call my question. It's very silly, but when I was reading Karna, my opinion of him changed drastically. Was there any character that you read about, any essay that changed your opinion for good about a particular character in positive light, and you started seeing him like in positive light, him or her? Anybody can go first if anybody.
If I may go first, so not before reading Yuganta, but before reading different aspects, what I used to do was I used to think that okay, Karan is bad or Duryodhan is bad and Krishna is good, and that really I just like the best thing I can do is that there's good and bad in everyone, and at what point what aspect shows that matters. You can say a million things about Karan, but for me the point that was really bad was that when the Draupadi Chirana was happening, he was sitting there, or in the book even she said that he was the one who instigated that. So what he did after that, yeah, okay, he was a noble man, what he was denied something because of his birth, but this was something he would have not done. And at the same time, Vidur, who was looked upon as a weak boy, or someone who is your brother, but you don't consider him as your equal, he stands up and says,
Not
okay,
necessarily weak, as
not
much as
in
low
the
caste, because his
yeah,
mother is a
Maid servant.
maid servant. She was the only one who could tolerate Vyas, no?
Yeah.
How interesting is that? And how close to our lives is that? How close to the life of an Indian woman is that today? That she may be a much more qualified and a much more worthy person, but because of the fact that she's a servant, she gets denied so much, and her child gets denied so much. So anyway, you were saying about Vijay, sorry.
okay, and the best thing about Vidur, last line I would say, best thing about Vidur is that whatever he was denied, but at the right time he did the right thing. For me,
Yes.
that was
Yes.
Vidur was my favorite character, and it is
Yes.
still great. But his and Karan's life is quite same. But Karan chose to be, always very. I didn't get that. I was denied. I has this pity. He always had a pity on himself. Vidur used what he had for his best, and when the time came, he just said, "I'm leaving your court now. I have tolerated enough. But this is something I draw a line, and that is the best thing."
And yet he was there with them when they finally go towards the Himalayas, no?
Right.
Isn't Vidur there all the way with them?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Once the Kurukshetra is over, and when they are all dying finally, when they are all old, and they are all moving towards the Himalayas, Vidur is still there. He is the real the person, the most trustworthy character in the story.
yes,
In that
yes.
sense.
I think the
Yeah.
essay on Vidur is called Father and Son in the book, and it draws a parallel between the life of Vidur and Yudhishthir in a way. And it had a very interesting theory which changed Yudhishthir for me, because initially I used to think that Yudhishthir is not that cool of a character, for the lack of better word, because as a child you think Arjun is the main Pandav, like he is the hero, the conventional hero of the story. And I used to find Yudhishthir too good to be true, like very idealistic. But the in her essay, Iravati Karve basically says that Yudhishthir was born from Dharmaraj, the Yamraj, Dharmaraj, and so on, and so was Vidur. So in a way, she suggests that Vidur could have been the father of Yudhishthir, which kind of shows why he was drawn to the Pandavas. And like Hitesh mentioned, that it's kind of interesting that how Vidur was always on the sidelines. But this theory itself made Vidur more interesting for me, that he was involved in the story, but in a very convoluted manner. So I think the fact that both of them had a little bit of gray in them made them more fascinating for me.
That's it. That's why this book is so much more contemporary.
Right.
This story, the Mahabharata, because it is like all of us. Every character is great. There are
Right.
no simple good and bad people. That's what our world is. It
Yeah.
really prepares us for this world of ours. And in fact, I just wanted to read out in the introduction, uh, they say that the Mahabharata, of course, perhaps there was a simple and less extensive story called Bharat. And then by a century-long accretion, it became a big Bharat, book about the descendants of Bharata. So, and there was another shorter version apparently called Jaya before that. And then it was added on to, and added on to, and added on to. And the interesting thing is that a class of people called Suta, representing the illegitimate progeny of the Kshatriyas, performed various functions at the court. They were counselors, friends, charioteers, all the bards. They are the ones that told the story of these kings and their exploits and their lives to the world outside and to each other. They glorified the king through his face, I'm sure, like all good bards should do. And they were also wandering minstrels. So they went around and sang and told these stories all around. So they were like the earliest storytellers, kathakars. And they are the illegitimate ones, the ones outside of society, the non-conformists. Whether technically illegitimate in the legal sense doesn't matter. But they are the ones who are outside of conventional society. They are the actors of their time. The actors are always the outcasts of society. The story for the Gujarati Bhavaya form, which is a traditional form, talks about that there was a man, he was made outcast because he stood up for his friend's daughter, and the friend was a Muslim, and he ate out of the same plate as the Muslim girl. So he was made outcast. And he said, outcast outside. So he moved with his own family to the outskirts of the village and started singing and dancing and talking about it and performing stories. And sure enough, people started coming to him and listening to the story. So the storytellers are always the people from the outside, the ones who are looking on. Therefore, they can make connections. Therefore, they can make, they can show us a world that means something more than what we see around us. Right? That's what they think that these were like the films of that time. That's what films have to do today. It's trying to represent the reality it is around, not in a realistic sense only, like a documentary does. Sometimes in a fanciful sense, like the Hindi movie does. I mean, so you have Ravan in the Mahabharata, and you have Mugambo today, right? So you exaggerate your villain. You make the story more into मिर्च मसाला लगा तो कहानी करनी पड़ती है ना, तो मिर्च मसाला तो लगाया वो बंदों ने और कहानियां सुनाई. These are the stories which were passed down and finally put into a book, and today now we are hysterical about it, saying कि नहीं ऐसे ही लिखा होगा. No, this is what is evolving with the centuries, and that's the beauty. They're constantly, they're like a river, like the Ganga. Tributaries keep joining, they keep enriching. Why do we want just one way of looking at the world? I can't understand that. एक ही रास्ता सही. तो बेचारे सेमेटिक रिलीजन वो करते हैं, अमाउंट तो करने दे बेचारा को. हम क्यों ये करें? We have the scope to be so varied. I really feel that loss very strongly just now. So we're becoming, monoculture. एक ही टाइप का नहीं होना चाहिए. सारा मजा किरकिरा हो जाएगा.
Absolutely.
And that has been the beauty of our ancient culture as well, that everyone believes in their gods and their interpretations of the mythology or the reality, whatever.
Or doesn't believe in God.
Yeah, exactly. Correct.
And
Workers never believed in God. They weren't there right from the beginning. They
Yeah.
were in the Ramayana, they talk about it.
Right.
So they are there. options are open for everyone. That's the best part of it, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
That is really the best part of it. Your
absolutely.
option is your own. तुम करो जो करना चाहते हो. मगर सोचो, question, be connected. So that's the darshan or the nirguna or so much masti we have got here. I just love that. And it's reflected everywhere. It's reflected in our music. It's reflected in our riti rivaj, the way in which we behave with each other. It's reflected everywhere.
Yeah.
That's something that we should really try and hold on to, rather than getting to this whole, single frame Bollywood version of everything.
Ma'am, like for example, in the north we worship the Ganesha, the son of Shiva. In south they worship the son of Shiva called Kartikeya. Still, it's just so beautiful. That
Shakespeare said it. What is his name? Rose
sorry,
by any other. Shakespeare also said it. Now, what is his name? Rose by any other name will smell just as sweet. Shakespeare ki hai na favorite famous line. Yes. I mean, नाम में क्या रखा है?
so
And,
I
and
think
the idea is the same, no? It's the idea of the Vignarata. Whether it's Kartikeya or it is Ganesh. The connection is that of the Vignarata.
Right.
I think, ma'am, there's something, I don't know if it's for me, but I can't hear you well. I think,
Is that so? You can't
yeah,
hear me?
is it for everybody or is it just for me?
yeah, it is for a little bit. Sometimes it's
Yeah.
अच्छा,
Slightly.
शायद वो connection थोड़ा गड़बड़ होता होगा. Is
No.
that better? Right?
Yes, ma'am, it's much
Yeah.
better.
Very-
But does anybody have, before we wrap the discussion?
Yes, I have one last question, if ma'am could answer that. You mentioned that the Mahabharata is like a river that more tributaries keep getting adding on to it. So I just wanted to know that what are the like, even in the river there's some water that stays constant throughout. So what are the building blocks of the Mahabharata that kind of make it so universal that people keep adding their own interpretation to it, which don't change, while at the same time things that keep getting adding on to it. So I just wanted to know that what makes the Mahabharata so universal that some things don't change in it.
The essential characters don't change in all kinds of versions, and there are versions all over the country. The interpretation of situations described in the classical Mahabharata, whatever you want to call it,
Right.
those, they more or less similar. But the interpretation changes a lot, depending on what lens is being used. The tribals look at it in a very different way. In the south, as somebody was saying, yeah, it's looked at in very, very different ways.
Jains have their own Mahabharata, in which
Yes.
they add their
Yeah.
as well.
Yes, the Jains, you say. Did you say the
Yeah.
Jains?
Jain, yes.
Achha, what is that? I didn't know that. What is that?
So basically, the Chinese wrote their own Mahabharata. So what they did, I think I froze.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now you're back. Yeah.
So Chinese wrote their own Mahabharata, and they added their Tirthankar as a character in the end.
Oh, interesting.
And the only part is there is that he was a cousin of Krishna, and there was a debate that who should be the king, him or anyone else. So he came out to be more powerful than Krishna, and he thought that Krishna should be is a better man than me. Then he took a moksha from his life and went to the forest.
Okay, I didn't know. But there is a puppeteer in Delhi by the name of Anurupa Roy. He does a version of the Mahabharata. If you ever get a chance to see that, please do. I think they have an online, maybe on YouTube or something. You can find at least part of it. And she worked with a leather puppeteer from Andhra Pradesh. And she was telling me that it was unbelievable working with this man because he had a different take and several different takes on each character, on each story, on each incident. But he could tell it in 20 different ways. And all of them worked with a minor tweaks. The structure stayed the same, the events stayed the same, but the take was completely different. So इसकी वजह बिल्कुल अलग. And this is true of local performers everywhere. They all interpret the Mahabharata much more freely than I think they do the Ramayana. The Ramayana is still more fixed in the interpretation. The Mahabharata is that everyone has a ball with that story.
Yeah.
I think there are yes, the characters, the incidents, and the essential dilemma of not good and evil, but two Semitic concepts for us, I feel.
Right.
But dharma, karma, and all the various permutation combinations of the two, that seems to be the constant conflict point. It's not a clean fight of good versus evil. And that's why I think it is so interesting to interpret and reinterpret over and over again. And lends itself so beautifully to it. I mean, of course, you can also simplify it in a very beautiful way, like Peter Brooks did it with his Mahabharata. I've only seen the film version of it. I haven't ever seen it performed live, so I don't know the impact. I'm sure it must have been magnificent, dramatically. I don't think he did very much with the reinterpretation of the story. It was a pretty simple telling of it. It was not even that filled with bhakti as the B.R. Chopra version. Incidentally, the dialogue for that is written by Rahi Martin Raza.
Yes.
So, you know, that also could probably happen only in India.
If I may say one thing, in that in the Doordarshan show Mahabharata, there was one dialogue which is like favorite for me. So always Bhishma and Vidura are discussing. So once they were discussing and Bhishma said something and Vidura as usual said Parantu. And Bhishma was like, Vidur, ye tum Parantu bolna kab chodoge? That dialogue for me was like, that's like, that show is like very good.
But बेचारा क्या करे, विदुर was the intellectual, वो परंतु नुआन ढूंढना ही पड़ता था, है ना? And Bhishma was nice old Bollywood. फटाफट काम करो, मैं जो बोलता हूँ वो करो. Right? But the parantu is what adds the layers and the nuances. Difficult to deal with, but parantu is not difficult. उसको आज के जमाने में क्या liberals and they're all almost like dirty words, no? Intellectuals, liberals. But maybe Vidur was the first intellectual in that lot. He seems to be the only one who was thinking very deeply, apart from Krishna, who was also playing many games alongside. But that is a fascinating character. Again, Indraji Bhagwan ne converted the Krishna. How interesting is that? I don't know. I mean, I don't know enough about the history and the background of it. But yeah, even God doesn't get it right always. That's wonderful, isn't it? How many gods do you know like that? Who are as fallible as all of us?
Right.
Yes.
It's an interesting idea. I like that. I like that.
Yes, ma'am. But thank you so much for joining this conversation, ma'am. And we are, I think all of us are really happy and that we read the book and then we're here for the discussion. You joined us. And I think all our doubts and questions are now clear.
Yeah,
And
no, I hope not. Because my doubts and questions are still, you know,
I think we'll
forever.
continue to
But that's the lovely part of
have a lot more conversation in the book club also.
Keep on going back to it throughout the lifetime.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining.
Lovely
Thank you so
talking
much,
to all of you and listening to your views. I really enjoyed that.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Bye, ma'am. Have a good evening.
You too.
Guys, how was it, guys?
Wow,
Wonderful.
it was too good. Like, I'm too grateful to have had this session with ma'am. Yeah, too nice.
Yeah, it is. There are things which you dream of, and suddenly comes true.
Yeah.
When she was talking about the puppet as the storytellers of the Mahabharata, I was reminded of Paheli, where Nasir sir and her, they were the puppets and
Yeah.
they were narrating the story. So yeah, kind of surreal. Yes.
It was, I mean, she's amazing to talk
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
Yes.
But guys, we should also reveal the book for next month.
Yes.
Yes.
And
I was when Ratna Ma'am left, like last time, Kullu stayed for that. No, this time Ratna Ma'am left. I was like, oh man, like we are not getting it today, or it's gonna be.
no, 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 it's happening today. I just, because I had told her like it will stay for 15-20 minutes. She was so kind enough. She stayed for good 1 hour.
Right.
Yes.
And, I was like, deep down, I was a little like worried, like, oh, we've taken up a lot of time.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, we do have the book for next month with us.
Yeah.
And does anybody, I don't know, I think about 40 people are watching us right now. Guys, thank you for staying tuned until now. And I'm very happy that all of you are still here. But does anybody want to take a wild guess? I do that always. But for who is
Yeah.
picked. But it's the theme is related to Mahabharata again. So I was very
Yeah.
happy when that happened.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll get to do more of research, but
Hmm.
I'll share my screen. And give me 1 second. I'll share my screen, and the person who's picked up the book for the next month. And I'm loving the fact that a lot of people are picking up the books for a book a month. The person who's picked up the book for the next month is Manu S. Pillai. And I'll also share the audio. Everyone can see my screen, right? I just want to be
Yes.
certain. Nothing apart from this thing, right?
Thank you, Vani and Chalchitra Talks, for inviting me to recommend a book for your A Book a Month series. The book I'm going to recommend is something I read in my teens, a little knowing that I would end up actually working with the author for several years, a few years down the line. And the name of the book is The Great Indian Novel by Shashi Tharoor. It came out, I think, in the late 80s, 1989 or so. When I read it, I was still in school or high school perhaps, and I found it extremely amusing, very astute, where it combines the great Indian epic, the Mahabharata, along with a lot of more recent Indian politics in the modern period in the 20th century. And it was done with great humor, great life, a lot of energy, and it remained a favorite book for the longest time. In fact, of all of Shashi Tharoor's books, I think this is right up there for me. Funnily enough, I've got several of his other books autographed, but never the Great Indian Novel. But I hope your readers will enjoy reading it. It's quite a blast, it's very entertaining, and hopefully it'll live up to expectations.
So, guys, that's the book for the month of March.
Yay.
The first thing I did was I checked the length of the Great Indian Novel.
Yeah.
But I hope all of us would have finished the book.
I
And
think, yeah, this is the second time this has happened that I already have the book. And
have
here it
the
is.
bottom of the book today.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Yeah.
But this is amazing. Hindol has a head start.
Yeah. And I read like around 20 pages and then didn't read it again. But I think, yeah, this is good motivation. Like I hope to be on the next Book of Month stream as well.
Yeah, I'm also hoping we'll be able to get Manu for the discussion as well.
Yeah.
What about you guys? Are you planning to read the book? I mean, abhi to haan hi bolna padega.
But I love the fact that because abhi Yugant padhi hai, there would be some continuity as well.
Huh.
No, but Hindol mentioned it very well that the reward is very good.
Yeah.
You get to
Yeah.
discuss the book with someone who recommended it, and we virtually met Ratna Ma'am today because we read a book.
Yeah.
Reward is very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, guys, please keep on reading books for the particular months.
Yeah.
So, since the author is Shashi Tharoor, should we expect to read the book with a dictionary?
I am not sure.
Yeah.
But this was amazing, guys. Thank you so much for joining. Priya couldn't join us because I think there was some network connection. But I want to thank all of you for being here, even though time ka we weren't certain. We had decided sometime, but because of some issues, we had to start late. But thank you so much. everyone. And I'll see for everyone who's watching, there's the link to purchase the book. I think it's in the description or it'll be updated in some time. And I hope everyone likes the pick for the month of March. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining today. And I hope you guys have a great evening. We'll see you again at the end of March with when we'll be discussing the great Indian novel.
Yep.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Bye, guys.